Al, are we live? All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the regularly scheduled Tabor Town Council meeting for September 12th, 2022. Before we begin our meeting, I would ask that everyone join us for 1 minute of silence to mark the passing of our late sovereign Elizabeth II by the grace of God of the United Kingdom, Canada, and her other realms and territories, head of the Commonwealth, defender of the faith. Please join me for 1 minute of silent contemplation. Absolutely. Thank you. All right, if I could call the meeting to order, please, and ask for the adoption of the agenda as presented. Councillor Beckering,
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Also move.
motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. No public hearings. Adoption of the minutes. Item 4.1, minutes of regular meeting of council, August 15th, 2022. Mr. Thibault.
So just the regular minutes in front of you for council's approval.
All right, thank you. Any questions or concerns? Councillor Firth.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move the council adopts the minutes of the regular meeting of council held on August 15th, 2022 as presented.
Thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item number 5. There are no business arising. Item 6, bylaws. Item 6.1, bylaw 16, 2022, lending bylaw. Mr. Thibault.
Mr. Orwa is unavailable right now, so I'll speak to what I can. So this is the second and third reading for the lending bylaw. So for STAR, or Society for Tabor Arts and Recreation. And there was no petition that came through on first reading, so we're just asking for the second and third reading.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Someone prepared to make the first required motion. Councillor Rudd.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Mayor. The council gives second reading to bylaw 16-2022 lending bylaw, Society for Tabor Arts and Recreation.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Someone prepared to make the second required motion. Councillor Bruin.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll prepare to make the second motion that council gives third and final bylaw, or I should say that council gives third reading and final bylaw 16-2022 lending bylaw, Society for Tabor Arts and Recreation.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item 7, action item 7.1, request to transfer funds from 2022 capital reserves to West Trail Extension Project Trout Pond. Mr. Thibault.
Again, I'll be trying to field this one for Mr. Orwa. So this is a formality that didn't take place at the end of the year, where we typically move forward existing funds that were slated to be going towards a project like the Trout Pond projects. If you recall, at the last meeting, we had given approval to move forward with 4 of the projects. and then gained an understanding that money had not been carried forward specifically for these projects, so went back into capital reserves. So to keep the auditors satisfied, and moreover Mr. Orwa satisfied, to be able to run through these projects, the request in the amount that's there would put us back to the place where the funds were supposed to have been before they didn't get carried forward from the Trout Pond project.
All right, just to clarify that didn't get carried forward in the 2021 process, correct?
I believe that's correct.
Okay.
It didn't go from,
All right.
yeah, it had in previous years from 18 to 19, 19 to 20, it
Okay.
just somehow got missed.
All right, fair enough, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Bruin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm prepared to make the motion that council authorizes the funding of $562,737 from the capital reserves for the West Trail Extension Trout Pond project, which includes the accessibility pathway to the shoreline, playground, day-use camp, kitchen, and extended camping.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 7.2, proposed renewal encroachment agreement policy. Mr. Tebow.
I believe Mr. Egan is going to come forward and explain what we have for changes on this one.
All right, thank you, Mr. Egan.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Council.
Good afternoon.
Before you at this point in time is the encroachment agreement policy, PLN 3, which is up in the standard 3-year cycle for renewal. Adjustments to the policy are all formatting and some minor administrative and wording adjustments.
All right. Fairly basic criteria, requirements. All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Rudd?
I'm just curious on, so if there is an encroachment discovered, then there's an agreement entered into between the town and the landowner?
That's one possible resolution of
Okay.
that situation, yes.
Yeah. I guess you take him to court and take the land back too.
Yes, that would be another possible option.
Yeah. But my question would be around if when agreement is reached, is that something that's notarized or done as a court document, or is it sufficiently supported by the MGA that it would inure itself down the line to the next owners?
I'm going to deflect that to our technical expert,
Okay.
Selena.
All right, thank you. Selena?
Mr. Rudd through Mr. Mayor. Yes, there's requirements that they have it registered against the title at land title, so it does carry forward. And we do have a lawyer prepare them. It's actually, the cost is all the burden of the person who's done the encroachment as well.
Nice.
All
Thank
right,
you.
just to clarify, I believe it's doing a number of them in the last several years. I believe it's related to a contract of sorts that shows that encroachment agreement allowed with the landowner and or the town of Tabor, correct?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right, thank you. Councillor Sorensen?
So sorry, just to clarify then, if you have like an agreement for like 100 years, for example, then it would you need as a landowner to reapply for a new agreement?
So, Mr. Sorensen through Mr. Mayor, it's usually specific to the encroachment itself. Once the encroachment is either destroyed by 75% or in a need to be replaced, then it has to be built on the property and it can no longer be. So it's specific to the encroachment, and it doesn't necessarily carry forward to a new item, but it does carry forward as long as it remains on the property with successive people who own the property. So say you built a fence and the fence was fairly dilapidated and you wanted to rebuild it, at that time you would have to build it on your property. You couldn't rebuild it in the same place. And that's worded in the documents as well.
All right, thank you. Councillor
Can I-
Brun?
Can I
Sorry,
just
yes,
add
another
on to
question,
that?
sure.
So just to clarify, because I'm not sure if this applies or not. So say our backyard has that green strip and we're using part of that. There's an agreement. Is that
That's something different.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying.
All right, thank you. Councillor Bruin?
I think this came about when we surveyed some older buildings downtown, finding that they were 6 inches out here or there. So every year we'd have to renew that. So this covers that in some sense.
Yes, there have been many ways encroachments have been handled in the past in town. Sometimes they were time limited, sometimes, so our current method of handling them is specific to the actual encroachment, and it may remain as long as it's there, and then if it's destroyed or needs to be replaced, it's fixed at that time.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, someone prepared to make a motion. Councillor Sorensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd be prepared to make that motion that council approves the encroachment agreement policy PLN-3 as presented.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item 7.3, response to standing item 240, 2022 Agri-Food Tourism Initiative. Mr. Tebow.
So, just like is mentioned, this is a response to one of our standing items, which I'm always happy to remove from the list. I think this one's been on there a little bit from Councillor Sorensen, so Mr. Egan will explain.
All right, thank you.
As mentioned, this item is in response to standing item 240-2022. There are actually two components that our Economic Development Officer has investigated. The first being the Tourism Lethbridge, partnering with the Exhibition Association, where they offered an Invest Local seed to table dinner that occurred in Lethbridge. The concept there is to offer a long table dinner experience with locally sourced foods. The second component to the question posed was the potential of using the Tourism Relief Fund, which was initiated to help reboot tourism in the post-COVID situation. We don't feel we can actually use this particular grant in application to a long table dinner for two reasons. One are grant related requirements, and the second one is the requirement from the federal government that all funds are expended by March 2023, which is fairly soon.
All right, thank you. Councillor Sorensen.
So I'd just like to thank administration for looking into this, and, hopefully one of these times we'll be able to, initiate something and move forward in just promoting our region. So I thank you for looking into this for me.
All right, yes, thank you for that update. Any other questions or comments? Okay, no motion required. Thank you. Moving on to item 7.4, proposed renewal legal services. Mr. Tebow.
I'll have asked Ms. Carrie Van Ham to look after this one for us.
All right, thank you, Ms. Van Ham.
Good afternoon, Council.
Good afternoon.
So this policy is coming up for its 3-year renewal on the rotating schedule. And so there has been a couple of changes that we took the opportunity to make on this policy as listed in your background information. So the update is that the directors' names have changed in accordance with the new organizational structure. And also I have been added in there because it is a course of my normal duties. So we just thought we would formalize that in policy. So I'm available if there's any questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions arising? Councillor Rudd.
I know that 2.1.6, that the town will seek legal advice to represent the town in matters proceeding to a hearing or trial. So is that extended to bylaw operations? So when the bylaw officer is doing his duty and issues a summons and an individual has a court date, how is that managed? Because when the bylaw charges come up in court, they're on the docket, they're read into the docket, and there's no one there representing the town to speak to it. And there's no one there that has that authorization to represent the town to do that. So do you know how that works? Or, because, somebody, they won't even take a not guilty plea. They just look around, anybody from the town, nope, all right, quashed, gone.
Councillor Rudd through Mayor Prokop, I believe that's directly managed through Taylor Police Service. I know that there are some billings when things are required through bylaw service, the town does make payment for those that have been authorized through, say, a legal law firm, Baldry Sugden, or another law firm, so. But we could take that question back to TPS and ask them directly for that particular scenario. if you
Yeah,
like.
yeah, I don't know if it was a one-off or not, happened to be in court last week when that did happen. So, I just didn't want to see that be a pattern and someone out there doing their job for naught. So, you know, if you could have administration check to see what's in place when bylaw matters are on the docket for appearance.
Sure.
How is that managed?
Yeah, and that actually doesn't actually pertain to this particular policy, but we can take that back if you're more comfortable and get that answer before this is
Okay.
considered, if you'd like.
Yeah, please.
Okay.
All right, any other questions or comments? All right, so just to clarify, so we're looking for some information coming back through Councillor Rudd's inquiry and/or Ms. Van Ham's information before we go ahead with this? Is that what I'm understanding? We could still go ahead with this? Right.
They're not-
Okay, that's just an add-on.
They're not directly linked.
Yes, okay.
That's my
Okay, just to be
understanding.
clear, that's what I was wanting to understand for sure. Okay. All right, very good. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Firth?
I'm prepared to make a motion, Mr. Mayor.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I move that council adopts the legal services obtaining legal advice policy ADM-1 as presented.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 7.5, resignation to Municipal Library Boards. Mr. Tebow?
Thinking this one's fairly straightforward. It's a resignation from the library and wishing Mrs., I don't want to say it incorrectly, Zedley, the best in
I
future
believe it's
endeavors.
Zedley,
Zedley.
I think. Is that correct?
Yeah.
All right.
So if there's any questions, there's
All
really
right,
not much
thank
more.
you. Any questions arising? All right, thank you. Someone prepared to make that motion? Councillor McLean?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that council accepts the resignation of Amanda Zedley from the Tabor Library Board with regret, and council wishes Ms. Zedley to the best in any future endeavors.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. On to item 7.6, regional collaboration opportunities. Mr. Tebow?
I feel like I'm doing a lot of the speaking tonight here.
Absolutely.
So this particular item, this was something that had come up in our strategic planning back in November, and the idea was that council was to come up with some potential ideas or areas where mutual interest might reside amongst other municipalities. So this is a formal request from administration, coming from administration, based off of our strategic planning that council had asked for. And we've identified a few areas that we believe we heard that were areas of mutual interest. Certainly things don't have to be limited to this, but this is what we knew prior to building the RFD. So recreation master plans, water and sewer services, the ag corridor, and economic development approach. The MD had actually sent us a request this direction about some economic development ideas. So that's what this is all about.
All right, thank you. Councillor Sorensen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I was just wondering, so is this for administration to meet together, so like-minded administrations, or is this for council and administration also?
Yes, sorry, the request is for council members to get together as joint councils. So we do a little bit of that in a smaller area on a committee, but this is the idea of all council members getting together and having a conversation in these areas.
If I could just add on to that, Mr. Mayor.
Absolutely.
So we already kind of meet through the Joint Economic Development Committee, and I was just wondering if that could be kind of spearhead this type of dialogue, because perhaps sometimes we find like we lack a purpose sometimes during those meetings, and it'd be kind of a nice direction to go forward, because we do discuss a lot of these projects.
All right, thank you. Mr. Tebow?
I would just suggest there's a couple of options. That certainly is one of them. And we also have, get the acronym correct, IMDC, Intermunicipal Development Committee. which has touched already on water and sewer historically, and could also be a venue for the other items.
Yeah, thank you. Just for Councilor Sorensen's benefit and the rest of the council, actually, I think good idea as far as the concept, but I don't think it's changed. Barnwell is no longer part of JEDC, right? Is that correct?
Can I respond?
Sure.
Yeah, I believe so, but
Okay.
maybe if we go in this direction, we might be able to invite them back.
Yeah, all I'm saying, I'm just thinking that all things considered, that we've tried to do the joint methods before, and we have done actually. So to me, the more the merrier. If you get 3 or 4 from each council as an example, it's probably better to getting all those heads together, making sure we're on the same page, and as opposed to just the JADC format, which in some cases maybe only have one rep, I think, in a lot of those cases, right? Just as an example. Councilor Beckering?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, we have not met as councils between Vauxhall, Barnwell, and the MD of Tabor and Town of Tabor for quite some time. I think it's probably time to start the initiative of discussing possible collaboration, which the province, of course, really promotes, and I think it's a good thing. But I think we should meet as full councils, even though the JEDC is an important committee, and so is IMDC. But I think all councils should be involved, and I think it should be done as soon as possible, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilor Rudd?
Yeah, just looking at these items identified here, and particularly the agricultural corridor initiatives, that's, I think, a big one, but I don't know very much about it. And so I just as a suggestion, perhaps, if we do have our first, joint meeting, that we would have perhaps someone come in and outline what the strategic planning is around this, and what initiatives are available, and what our role might be, and how we can support that.
All right, thank you. I think there is other information available, correct, Mr. Tebow, about all those items that would be helpful to all of us on council in that regard?
There is some additional information on probably 3 out of the 4, but not in here, and probably not to the degree that Councillor Rudd had just asked about. But certainly there is more information, and we would be briefing prior to a meeting around those items. Yeah.
All right, I'm just not sure if we were to do that. So it's a good suggestion, but who might do that as an example too? Lay that out for us.
I think between the 2 administrations, we would be able to come up with where some of these things land, along with connections with our MLA.
All right, fair enough. Thank you. Any other questions, Councillor McLean?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am prepared to make a motion.
All right.
That council directs administration to arrange a meeting with our interested neighboring municipalities to discuss the possibilities of a regional approach to various areas of mutual interest.
Right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 7.7, second quarter financial statements. Mr. Tebow.
Again, Mr. Orwell is not here. However, he did want me to mention that this obviously has gone through the audit committee, and that the members of the audit committee, maybe one in particular that has a significant interest in financials, might speak to what went on in the audit committee to help the rest of council.
All right, thank you. Councillor Becken, would you like to start that off as per the suggestion?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your confidence, Mr. Tebow. And as usual, expert self, Mr. Orwell presented the financial statement for the second quarter. There was nothing awry. There was some good news attached to the audit that we looked at, Mr. Orwell. I think council has the copies of it, so you can read it for yourself. And I think we're in really good shape, and I thank administration, in particular, Mr. Orwell, for a job well done. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you. And we had the pleasure of Deputy Mayor Firth join us for this last one here. So that was actually a first, I believe. So, and Councillor Sorensen was not able to attend, but that's fine. That's why we have an alternate. But all things considered, I think we all find that, again, Mr. Orwell does a great job, and or Donna, to explain things accordingly and talk in layman's terms when necessary. And as Councillor Becker indicated, we are in good shape all the way around, so that is definitely great news. All right, any other, Councillor Firth, any comments your end?
Nothing really to add other than just to echo what Councillor Beckering said. Mr. Orwa and Ms. Weiss do an excellent job of laying everything out and making it legible, palatable to someone who is not used to going through line by line financial statements. But yeah, it was illuminating to sit in on it. So thanks.
All right, perfect, thank you. All right, any other questions or comments? Councillor Rudd?
I'm hoping maybe Garth or Carly could answer this question. And I was just some of the numbers confused me a little bit. And I want to be clear. So under revenues, that'd be on the first sheet, I think. Number 2, I guess. And it says under revenues, net taxes available for municipal purposes. And it's in the $10 million range. And then it says year-to-date operating, it's almost 12 million. So does that mean that we collected more taxes than we thought we were going to?
All right, Mr. Thibault?
Yeah, whoever would know the answer to that. Because that I guess if we're in good shape, then.
I think I can answer that confidently. So what that is is depicting that we've collected more this year at this time than what we collected last year at the same time, and that's probably due to assessments and tax increases that happened year over year. So it's just a reflection of what happened by the time the second quarter arrived.
So that it kind of catches up at the end of the year?
It'll all balance out at the end of the year, but year over year, we had a tax increase last year, so we should see more taxes come through.
Okay, good, thanks.
All right, thank you. Got everything covered? No other questions? All right, no motion required. All right, moving on to the next item, item 7.8, information for council. Mr. Thibault.
Okay, me again. I'm just getting flogged here. So information for council, no motion is required, but certainly questions can come my way. So the first item that was there is just an approval letter. So we've been seeking approval for our community standards unit to operate the MD, and we received that letter of approval from the ministry. Secondly, we had an update for that potable water sign, and after reading it and talking with Councillor Sorensen, I'm not 100% certain we covered it, so certainly we can further that if it didn't get covered. And the last motion was talking with the, on the standing item list, was talking with the museum. So at this time, we just let the museum know, Councillor Rudd, that we're not really in a position to speak to the space until community, I just almost said community in bloom, Chambers and Commerce, the Commerce building gets actually created, which is 12 months away from whenever something hits the ground. So we let the museum know that we'll be exploring any options with them, including maybe even a redo of their own space, and we tasked them with that in a drawing. So it's a non-answer answer, but we don't really have something to go forward with, but I wanted to take care of it off the standing item list. So split it with me. Thanks. So that's the 3 items. So maybe Councillor Soren, could you let us know if we addressed it or didn't?
All right, thank you. Councillor Sorensen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Mr. Thibault. And unfortunately, yeah, there was a little bit of maybe misunderstanding there. I was wondering if there could actually be a sign posted right at the dump station, just mapping out where people, once they've emptied, that they can now fill their units with potable water, because as I understand, it's not available right at the dump station. And maybe also just showing where the camping locations are and where the potable water locations are.
All right, thank you. Councillor Firth?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just was wondering if I could add on to Councillor Sorensen's suggestion that, and I'm not sure, I was just about to look up, on our website, does it list places where potable water is available? I know it says that they were going to add it under camping services, but I think that would be helpful. That would be my first place that I would look if I was looking for places to access potable water in a municipality.
Right, I'll actually ask Raman, he can discuss that a little further, because I think he was involved in that information.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And looks like I misread it. And I'll go back and bring it back to you. But for putting it on the web, I believe putting it on the website, that's where it should go. So if you want it to be posted anywhere else, I'm open to suggestion. I'm gonna make sure it happens.
It was going to get added to the website under the
Camping,
camping, yeah. So that is something that was going to take place,
that's right.
or I don't know if it has or not, but that was the idea.
All right, thank you, Councillor Sorensen.
I'm not sure if it's in council's interest then to actually post a sign, just of where those locations are. So as people are filling up, or I guess they're emptying, they'd be able to just look at the sign and see where these places are located, so.
Yeah, I think signage is always good, particularly for visitors. Yeah, I think the locals are all pretty familiar with that, but visitors would not be, for sure. So, Councillor Bruin.
Could it not be something so simple as for potable water sites, please visit the website? Because if you're going to spend the money to do a map and all that, there's a cost to that. So just say, visit website to see where potable water is located.
Okay.
I would suggest.
All right, thank you, Councillor Sorensen.
I agree, but I also disagree. I think it would always be good to have a map of where our recreational facilities are and where people can camp, and just give different ideas as to different locations. But that would be my suggestion.
Yeah, it's actually, I would agree with that. I think all things considered, signage like that is not that pricey, I don't believe, or something. We're talking like just an average sign, right? Mr. Tebow?
I don't think it's all that expensive. There'd be a bit more maintenance to think about if sites were to change or something like that. We would have to make a cognizant effort to go change that physical sign as opposed to something electronic, but it's up to council how they like to.
Okay,
go
thank you,
after it.
Councillor Firth.
That's actually exactly what I was going to say, just that it's a lot easier to update the website if things change, or if all of a sudden potable water is not available at that site, versus when you have a printed sign, it's a lot more challenging and sometimes things get missed, and wouldn't want to be giving people the wrong information. And so that would be my suggestion.
All right, thank you. A few different suggestions here. So, Councillor Sorensen?
Could I just get a request, or make a motion to get some more information as to one or the other, and
The
then
options.
we could make a decision in a future meeting?
Yeah, I think that's probably reasonable. Mr. Tebow, that covered, you don't need any motion per se about that, other than kind of the follow up with a discussion.
I don't know if the original standing item, is that how it's, right here, make some type of sign to note tourists in the area where they can actually get potable water. So it's pretty generic. We could come back based on that and just leave that on the standing items list and come back with something that covers today's request a little better.
All right, fair enough. Everybody okay with that? Okay. All right, let's go that route. Perfect, thank you. All right, on to item 7.9, standing item for council requests. Mr. Tebow?
Yes, me again. So first item, I can barely read that from here. That's Councillor Rudd with the museum, so that one we discussed. Councillor Rudd for the 864 fence, that's taken a little bit of time, but I believe on the next meeting we will have a response to that one, so we'll leave that in progress for now. Councillor Sorensen got item number 3 looked after tonight with the agri-food. Councillor Bruin, we are still looking into the water feasibility. I believe it's probably landed with Gary and he's been off for a little bit, so we'll be trying to get something to the next meeting for that one. And the bottom one will remain in progress, so we come back next time. So outside of that, unless there was something else that folks wanted to bring forward, floor is
All
yours.
right. Any other standing item council requests? Councillor Beckering?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make a request regarding, or maybe a question rather than a request. The new gateway signs in town of Taber, which are beautiful. I have several people ask me, how come the husks around the cob are brown and not green? I don't know. Can anybody
Right.
answer that question?
Thank you. Hate to put you on the spot, but Mr. Tebow?
I don't think you hate to put me on the spot all that badly. There has been some discussion around that already. It was mentioned through Mayor Prokop as well. All I can say is that that sign went through a committee originally and was signed off on. It did not come back to council, and I couldn't. That was all taking place before I actually got on scene. So I don't know why it wouldn't have come back to council. I would have thought that would have been a good one to have come back to council. Not saying the council would have seen that or not seen that, but that particular part didn't happen in the process. There was some comments made that the signage that it's on, there is supposed to be an outline that looks teal, but right now it doesn't look teal because of the paint that's on the sign. Over time, that's supposed to start looking differently, but I don't know that it's ever going to achieve a green-looking husk that most people would identify with. So I don't have a real good answer other than, yep, it looks black, and it might look better a different color. Council can certainly let us know what they think about that.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Becker, for that. I think all things considered, I did also have some concerns brought to me, and myself and Mr. Tebow had a look and definitely agreed it's not a good color choice. Green would be preferred, a proper green leaf, as for authenticity is, I think, pretty key. So I just inquired about that with Mr. Tebow, whether it can be done. I believe we'd have to have an actual motion to carry through with that, and or whatever costs obviously would be attached to that.
Administration hasn't researched a cost to that yet, but there certainly would have to be funds expended because we did approve what was built and they built what we asked for.
Right. All right. Thank you. Councillor Sorensen?
It's a different standing item, so if we're not finished the
Okay.
discussion.
Yeah, I think we're still in the middle of this. So, all right, we'll get back to you on that. Councillor Beckering?
Mr. Mayor, I'm prepared to make a motion.
All right.
Mr. Mayor, I'll move that administration investigate the feasibility and or cost of painting the husks on the gateway signs a different color, perhaps green as it should be. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Agreed. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. And back to Councillor Sorensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I did have a resident that came and spoke with me in regards to drainage in his industrial area on 53rd Street and 64th Ave. I was wondering if administration could maybe explain as to how we can help out this landowner in the drainage of that property.
Right. Thank you. Mr. Tebow?
Lucky enough, Raman is here. If you feel that you could explain that, I know you did go to site. If not, we can get back to council at a different time. But if you think you can speak to it, Raman, then feel free.
Is Raman familiar with that particular site?
He
right
is,
now?
yes.
Okay. All right. Raman, are you okay with some formal response anyway?
How about we can just defer. We'll get back to you with that standing item request. I know that we did go out and look at it. I think it was an email in regards to an email that came back and forth.
Okay, yeah, I did see that. And I don't think that's the first time that's come about here. The town's done some things in the past, but it sounds like it's not completely rectified, right? So that's fair to come back for some discussion and or follow up for next meeting?
If council makes a motion and majority decide, then absolutely.
So you just need an actual motion in that regard. Councillor Sorensen, you prepared to put that motion together?
Can
All
I
right.
make a motion, please? That we investigate the stormwater, capabilities of, sorry, I think I lost the address, 53rd Street and 64th Ave. They're in that neighborhood. I'm not sure if that's the precise location or not, but if administration can report back on that, please.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you. Any other standing item council requests? Councillor Sorensen.
Sorry to hog the time, Mr. Mayor, but I was just wondering if it has ever been discussed, the completion of the trail around West View stormwater or that man-made lake or what have you, and how that can actually, that whole trail around the lake can be actually completed.
I'm just not sure where you're talking exactly, Councillor Sorensen.
So Westview, there's the playground.
Westview, yeah, okay.
And then there's a trail around part
okay.
of the lake, but not the complete lake.
All right, so you're just specifically talking about the lake itself, that location. Okay, Mr. Tebow?
I can tell you what I believe I know up to this point. Again, that was something that happened prior to me. My understanding is the developer still owns the half of that development, and our previous agreements suggested that what is completed was in the initial. I think there was 3 phases, so that's phase 1, and there's phase 2, and there's phase 3. So phase 2, because there has been no activity on there. There's been no completion of the grass and no completion of the landscaping, no completion of the actual trail that would encircle that and then actually continue on over to phase 3 and eventually line up with 864 and Trout Pond and stuff like that is the future plans. So I can tell you there has been discussions with the developer, with Mr. Egan and myself, trying to get him to the table to find a way to complete that, because I understand that when I first got here, residents weren't all that pleased with the aesthetics and that we have an unfinished trail. So I can tell you that it's in the works, but it was not something that was ever supposed to be completed based on what was existing with our original contracts with the developer.
All right, thank you. Any other standing item council requests? All right, seeing none, moving on to delegations. There are no delegations today, and media inquiries. Mr. Tebow.
There are no media inquiries.
All right, thank you. With that, I would ask for motion to move into our 30-minute meal break and reconvene in closed session. Councillor Sorensen.
I'll make that motion, please.
All right, thank you. Motion on the table. All in favor? Carried unanimously. Thank you.